getting right into it, man. What is sexual kung fu? And why do you do it? Where did it all come from? And I don't know, any other benefits to it that you want to get into? And anything else about your journey on the sexual kung fu path that you want to give us, and we can get the ball rolling.
Yeah, man. So kung fu in this context just means daily discipline. It's not like karate stuff or anything like that. So it's the daily discipline of harnessing and directing our sexual energy. And I was teaching hatha yoga since 2008. And I realized probably in 2015 that you can do all the down dogs in the world, but if you've got, sexual shame and blockages in your eroticism, the down dogs and the stretching kind of yoga isn't going to really address that. And so I started to research like Tantra. I think I actually was on Pornhub when I used to watch lots of porn. And I think I typed in like men's Tantra or something. And then my current sexual kung fu teacher popped up. Somebody had like illegally uploaded one of his sexual kung fu classes, Lauren Johnson, onto Pornhub. And I was watching it. Maybe this was like 2012. And I was in my apartment and he was naked teaching, squeezing his balls and arousing himself and separating orgasm from ejaculation. And I was trying to follow along, but all this like shame came up and I was like, oh my God, somebody's going to like see me. And I think that was also back when I was like experimenting with cannabis. So I was like extra anxious. I was like, oh no, like the apartments near me are actually really, really far. Like nobody could really see me, but all this shame came up and I realized, wow, I've got a lot of blockages around like being naked and, arousing myself around another human and these types of things. But I put it away because I wasn't ready and I didn't have the gumption or the wherewithal to really address those fears at that time. So I kept teaching like hot yoga, a lot of spin classes. I was kind of really working myself. Like I had to teach like 15 classes a week at least to make ends meet back then. So I was very, very like just go, all these really crazy spin classes and fitness classes of different sorts. And then I got really out of balance. I got a record deal and I was flying back and forth from Vancouver to Japan to promote my music and teach hot yoga over there. And one of my students actually, he invited me to try cocaine. It was probably in 2013, and I got addicted. And it wasn't that I was doing it like every day, but I was doing it a few times a month. And, I would be like up all night doing cocaine and drinking alcohol. And then I'd have to like teach a hot yoga class at like 9 a.m. the next day. It was very, very, I was not walking my talk as a yoga teacher. That's for sure. It was so out of balance. I was such a mess. And, I discovered a modality of healing called Germanic New Medicine. One of my close friends introduced me to it in 2012, but I wasn't ready at the time. And then in 2013 or 14, I felt ready and I asked her more about it. And I basically was taken into the fold by one of these lovely German new medicine teachers in Vancouver. Her name is Annalie, and I think she just turned 80. And at the time she was like 74, and she kind of like was like my surrogate grandma. And she taught me German new medicine. And this was like in tandem while I was doing drugs. And I didn't tell her I was doing drugs. And she was like, she paid to like fly me to the International Germanic New Medicine Conference in Toronto one year. It was very, very lovely. So anyway, one night I was doing drugs and I was doing particularly a lot of drugs and drinking. I was like very out of it. And then her face came into my consciousness and I just was like, oh my God, this woman believes in me so much. She's like putting so much love and money and time into teaching me Germanic new medicine. And I'm just squandering it. This is not my best life doing drugs at like 2 a.m. with random people. Yeah. And so I called her the next morning. I told her what I had been doing. And she kind of yelled at me in like a very loving way. And she's like, you're not supposed to like get high on illicit drugs. You're supposed to get high by like performing in front of people and learning German new medicine and sharing, your wisdom and these types of things, getting high on your own supply.
Yep.
And I was like, you know what, you're right. And so I stopped doing cocaine once I revealed to her that I had been doing it. And then a few months later, my cousin died of a cocaine overdose because most cocaine in North America is riddled with fentanyl. So the cocaine's upper, fentanyl's downer, so you get a heart attack and you die. He left behind his young daughter, Ruby, and that could have easily been me because Vancouver is particularly bad for fentanyl in cocaine.
That's wild.
And so that was really sad. And long story short, I got this really strong call to like start studying Kundalini yoga. And I would say Kundalini yoga was the gateway back into sexual kung fu, because Kundalini yoga is a lot of like internal focus and like connecting to your sexual energy and then nourishing your brain with it. You know, it's a far cry from like the Western kind of Lululemon stretchy yoga, which has a place, but there's literally no mention of sexual energy in most Western yoga classes.
Yeah.
So I went to see a psychic, and she was like, you know, you need to do Kundalini yoga. I was like, okay. And then I was like teaching at all these country clubs, and a lot of my students all of a sudden they're like, do you know Kundalini yoga? Could you teach a Kundalini? And I just kept Kundalini. So like, okay, the universe is signaling me to explore this lineage. So I went to Yoga West in Vancouver in Kitsilano, and I took my first Kundalini yoga class, like actual Kundalini. Like I'd done sort of Kundalini dance, but this was like a hardcore traditional Kundalini yoga class as taught by Yogi Bhajan. And I was like in tears and laughing, and we were dancing and we were singing, and with my singing background, it really vibed with me. I was like, oh my God, like you can chant certain mantras for certain problems, you know, to help heal your past or to help give you more money or help more confidence and this and that. So it really resonated with me. And I immediately signed up for the Kundalini yoga teacher training. And I think that was one of the best decisions I ever made. It was super expensive, but it was worth it. I ended up going to India to study level 2 Kundalini yoga with Gurmukh in the Himalayas. And yeah, it was really, really helpful, because basically what I realized is people like me will always be addicts. So for people like me, it's about subbing out bad addictions for good addictions.
I see.
So instead of like alcohol and cocaine, now it's Kundalini yoga and squeezing my anus and looking at my third eye and like flooding my body with superfoods and detoxifying from atrazine and things like that. So that's kind of my story in a nutshell. And the Kundalini yoga, because there was that connection finally to sexual energy, it's like, oh, this is a very powerful force between your legs. You can actually nourish other organs and glands with it instead of just shooting it out all the time.
Yeah.
Then I revisited sexual kung fu, and I was like, oh, okay, I get it now. And I had been hanging out a lot at naked beaches over the last 15 years. And so I was finally comfortable enough to be naked. I kind of broke free of that matrix conditioning that we were talking about off air, about like the body and shame and being insecure naked. And so it was just the right time. And I ended up teaching Kundalini yoga at a naked men's erotic festival. And the Kundalini yoga headquarters in New Mexico sent spies to my class, and they stripped me of all my licenses. They over $10,000 worth of teacher trainings. They stripped me and they excommunicated me from their community. And they said that I was violating the Kundalini teacher's oath by teaching naked. And my argument was like, I never said I was teaching Kundalini yoga as taught by Yogi Bhajan naked. I'm teaching my own brand of like a mixture of different styles.
Yeah.
But they weren't having it. That was probably 2018. So they blacklisted me. They slandered me on their website. And then 2 years later, it came out that Yogi Bhajan, who's like the main Kundalini guy, who brought yoga to the West, that he was a rapist and that he'd been like raping little girls and doing all these things and like singling out like gay guys and, you know, calling them, you know, so you like to take it up the butt, and like humiliating gay guys in front of the whole community and just like doing all these things that are maybe unbecoming of like a yogi. And so at that time, I had been talking about how they were slandering me. And one of the head ladies in New Mexico on like the yoga, Kundalini yoga board, she's like, you know what, this is ridiculous. We shouldn't be slandering you like we are. Let's talk to like the head of ethics lady. So we booked a bunch of Zoom calls with her. And I explained that, you know, the stress that had put me through to kind of be slandering me and telling me that I can't teach my own style of naked yoga. And she actually apologized. And after a couple meetings, they took my name off of their website as like one of the violators of Kundalini yoga. And they gave me all my licenses back. Not that I wanted them back at that point. I was like, I don't really want to be part of your community, because they're very like, I don't know. I just felt like it was very backwards. It was like initially Yogi Bhajan said, you're not allowed to have sex at all. Yet he was fucking all of his secretaries. It was like, it was very interesting. So that's what I like about sexual kung fu, is it's a very grounded lineage. And my teacher, Montauk Chia, he really walks his talk. And also the fact that in this sexual kung fu lineage, we actually bring the energy back down. We don't just keep it in the head. We don't just bring it up like the Kundalini yogis do. I was ending up getting all these headaches and kind of like, we call it like Kundalini syndrome, because they literally in the teacher training never taught us to bring the energy back down and store it in the navel. Mm-hmm. So I really like sexual kung fu because it's very grounding. And I feel like the world doesn't need more balloons. The world needs more grounded men and women.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So would you say that's what the missing link is in a yogic lifestyle, is actually embracing one's sexual energy and utilizing it and transmutating it in a way for our well-being?
I would say so. I think that sexual energy is life energy, life force energy. And I think that it's the most upstream way that the Matrix cuts us off from our power. It's like if they can shame us in our roots, then they don't have to put a literal cage around us.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, I think you can recognize that when you recognize your own power of your sexual energy, and then you can see how, like you said, yeah, the Matrix traps you in through things like porn and glorifying and over glorifying sexuality and ejaculation and just wasting your sexual energy, and almost how that's a normalcy in society. You can see that yourself when you realize the power that your own sexual energy holds. So yeah, 100%, man. It's definitely a form of control for sure. Pornography is definitely, what is your opinion on pornography? Is it all how you use it, or do you think it's just straight up the devil?
Well, they're finding like pornographic paintings, inside of caves and what have you. So I think people have been creating erotic content since time immemorial. Yeah. I think that a lot of modern day porn, the preponderance of it is very misogynistic and fake. It's like the women, you can tell they're not even really having a real orgasm. They have to kind of fake it. And I have some friends who are in the porn industry, and I saw them invariably before a shoot, injecting their cocks with certain things to make it look bigger and harder, and taking Cialis and Viagra. I'm just like, oh, that's not very natural. And most porn actors are, circumcised, and that's another way that the dominator system wounds us in the roots. And I've been reading a book called Circumcision, the Hidden Trauma by Ronald Goldman, PhD. And he talks about like how studies are starting to show that like sometimes the circumcision trauma can actually trigger men to be more violent. And in porn, there's a lot of violence sexually. So you wonder how that, if circumcision is one of the reasons why. There's also something called premature forcible foreskin retraction, which is what happened to me. The foreskin is actually glued to the head of the penis with the hymenal membrane until a boy is anywhere from age 6 to late teens sometimes. That's when it disappears. And so the doctor or the caregiver, they basically rip the foreskin off the head of the penis. It's very painful. I have a vivid memory of that happening to me when I was 4. This creepy doctor like ripping my foreskin back to expose the glans penis, and that's not supposed to happen to any caregivers or doctors. It's like the hymenal membrane's there. Only clean what is seen. If you've got like a small baby, don't like pull back the foreskin thinking you have to clean underneath. Let it naturally retract over time. And only clean what is seen is the actual correct instruction for that. So I think pornography is kind of like a symbol in many cases of the sexual trauma that men have been through. And then they sometimes take it out on women. Also, the people watching porn, it's a symbol of that. What you were alluding to is that misunderstanding of the value of semen and sexual energy in general. And basically, I don't know any dudes who watch porn to practice separating orgasm from ejaculation. Most dudes are watching porn to literally squirt out their manhood, to squirt out their jing chi. And just waste it and give it to the internet sex beast. So I think in general, pornography is quite problematic. That being said, I wouldn't say if somebody's super addicted to it to just stop cold turkey. I teach something called porn yoga. So I say, gratitude is the highest form of yoga. So if you can, consciously choose a piece of erotica that you want to watch for your viewing session and make it like a ritual, because anything done outside of ceremony, including sexuality, is not good for humans. So make it very ritualistic and intentional, and bless the actors and send them gratitude, and place your screen up higher and stand up while you're watching the porn, and have one hand on your genitals and one hand moving the energy throughout your body, and dance and be part of the erotic experience rather than just a shameful viewer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's all how we use it, have it not use us.
Exactly. Yeah. I think it can be a tool, and you can also use it as a tool to practice becoming aroused and then not ejaculating and having a full body orgasm.
Yeah. Can we get into that? How do you go about that? I find that difficult to believe, but I know it's possible, but I've never experienced anything like that in my life, and I wouldn't even know how one does it. So how could you explain that?
Yeah. So the way that I teach guys how to do it is I literally get naked and I just show them. And something about that is a great transmission. I tried to learn how to do it by reading, The Multi-Orgasmic Man by Montauk Chia, and I couldn't grasp it until I saw Lauren naked doing it. And I was like, oh, okay, that's how you do it. He was like, what does your vitality feel like as you're stroking your penis? Smile into that feeling between your legs of juiciness, and then let it overflow into every cell of your being. Feel that tingling sensation in your nuts overflowing into all 72,000 energy channels. And I usually bring it right down to my feet, all the way up to I let it overflow into every cell of my being. The traditional way is to return the energy to the brain and swirl it 9 times clockwise, 9 times counterclockwise, and then bring it out of the brain and store it in the belly. But it's basically, the 3 steps are, what does my vitality, you don't even have to be aroused. What does my juiciness feel like in my loins? Focus on it, because chi flows where the mind goes. Step 2 is smile into it, transmuting it into joy. And then breathe it into every cell of your being. Because most men have a very small balloon, just the cock and balls to hold the charge. And that's why they're addicted to ejaculation, because they get blue balls. But if you can have a big balloon, your entire body as well as your aura, to hold the charge, then you just simply become more magnetic, because you can hold more sexual energy without that uncomfortable blue ball sensation.
I see. So it's about directing the charge, in a way, directing the chi energy throughout your body. So rather than releasing it, you transmutate that throughout your body through focus.
Yeah, through focus, and you can store it. We always say, we call it the lower dantian, which means medicine field. And that's basically from your perineum up to your solar plexus. That whole area is your lower dantian. Well, your anus up to your solar plexus. And so about 4 fingers widths below the belly button for most men, because the balls hang lower than the ovaries. That is kind of like the central point of your medicine field. And Montauk Chia says above the belly button is your digestion. No, yeah, it's your digestion area. Below the belly button is your absorption area. So you want to store the energy, regardless of wherever you bring it in your practice. Always finish by storing it in that lower dantian absorption area. Very grounding, rather than in the brain. Like the Kundalini yogis are just like, oh. I remember when I was studying in India with Gurmukh, she's like, she addressed the class, she's like, don't think Kundalini yoga is like your saving grace. Like, I know people who did too much of it and they ended up in the psych ward. And we're all like, okay. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. I used to do a lot of Kundalini as well, and it's very powerful, but I know what you mean. It gets you very high on your own supply, and you can get very airheaded in a way.
Totally. And if you are going to do it, bring it back down. Like, don't just constantly just squeeze your anus and bring the energy up into your brain. Like, at least at the end of your Kundalini practice, bring it back down the front channel and store it in your low belly.
Mm-hmm. So sexual Kung Fu is more about a balance in your being of the energy?
Yeah, it's about realizing that your testicles are your turbines of vitality. They're your engines of potency. And when you can mix the blood and the chi in them and then let that energy overflow into your entire system, you become like a big walking genital. And you become more subtle, especially when you stop doing cocaine. Cocaine really punches holes in the aura and affects your ability to be subtle. And so then you become more addicted to extreme sexual experiences, or, looking for sex on, Grindr or Tinder, which is what I used to do. I didn't really have that much sex. I just was constantly scrolling on these sex apps, because I wasn't really in my body. I had all these holes in my auric field from the cocaine and the alcohol. And I believe that demonic entities were literally controlling me. Mm-hmm. And so the Kundalini yoga teacher training, it was a really great rinsing experience of like purifying the body using the asanas and the breath work, purifying the brain using the mantras, and purifying the intellect by them sharing teachings from the Yoga Sutras and the Bhagavad Gita and the different Indian texts with us.
Mm-hmm. So
like a cleansing.
Yeah, I get it. I know what you mean. And then you had to like go from the cleansing to become more of a grounded being with the kung fu in a way.
Yeah, and then accept that they're trying to shame me. They're calling me like, oh, you're doing Kundalini Yoga's white tantra. You're doing black tantra. You're doing horrible things by teaching naked. I'm just like, oh my God. The suppression of sexuality infiltrated the Kundalini Yoga community for sure. And so it was realizing that's not personal. It's just, they were brainwashed by Yogi Bhajan into thinking that way. So that I had to realize it was a lesson for me to not take anything personally.
Yeah. I always like to say, don't trust any practice or spiritual system that shuns sexuality in any way. There's just something not right about that. Like, how can you cut off a part of yourself like that and just completely just say no to sexuality? Like, it's so important to who we are. It's like literally why we're here. It's
exactly
why we exist. It's a part of us. Like, how can you just completely shun that and put that away and act like it doesn't exist? Like, I don't trust that. Like, if you have any kind of belief system that says complete celibacy, I respect it. I definitely respect it, but it's not for me. It doesn't really jive, because it's just like, how do you get rid of something that's so potent, so strong, so powerful in your being like that? It's just like, it's almost like you're trying to escape from it rather than accepting that it's part of yourself,
Totally. I have a theory that it was the colonization of India and most places in the planet with the sort of British. Well, I think in India it was a double whammy. I think in the 15th century, the Mughals took over India and then the British did after. And so the Islamic and Christian homophobia and anti-sex sort of shaming, Victorian kind of Puritanism infiltrated India, and anybody practicing a love of sexuality or an integration of sexuality with their spirituality was either killed or silenced. And so, yeah, even my ancestors in Scotland, we found out recently that my family, my grandpa, so my father's father was actually adopted. And we found that out through ancestry.ca, the DNA testing. One of my uncles got really into like 23andMe. And I mean, I did it back in 2017. Now I don't know if I'd give my DNA to these corporations, but back then I did it. There was a sale. So, but it was interesting because Blunderfield is a British sort of lineage, but because my father's father was adopted, he actually was genetically a Mannery, which is a Scottish lineage. So basically, long story short, I'm more Scottish than what we realized. I'm mostly Scottish and very little British, which I kind of like, because the British tried to take over Scotland and they wouldn't let them wear their kilts. They wouldn't let them play their bagpipes. They wouldn't let them do their erotic bonding rituals. The Celts used to worship a fertility god named Cernunnos, which means the horned one. And when the British infiltrated their culture, they said, no, you can't worship Cernunnos because he's the devil. He's got horns. He's a devil. It's like, no, he's a fertility god. He's got antlers. He's got a massive cock that's usually depicted as fully erect. And he's just this juicy beast. And so the dudes would literally suck each other's nipples and they would bond. And then when the British colonized, they would take their stories of like the erotic male bonding and then be like, no, they're just cousins and, and they're just friends. It's like, no, they were sucking each other's nipples and they were cuddling. Okay. It's like they were, their definition of friendship included an erotic bonding component. And this is something that squirts out now throughout the world in really sad ways. Because it's so natural. Erotic bonding between two dudes has been practiced since time immemorial, but because it's been so suppressed and there's so much shaming of it. Why? Because it releases so much testosterone. They don't want a society full of confident testosterone and bonded men. They want men who are in a state of competition and comparison. So they inject the gay panic, the homophobia into our consciousnesses.
Oh, I see. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, they don't want anything that's good for you. They make it seem really bad. And then the people who do engage in it, you have to identify with these limiting labels like gay or queer. And invariably you have to be on really hardcore black box drugs, certain AIDS drugs and what have you that have been shown to actually cause AIDS. Most men who have sex with men are on something called PrEP. And it's basically a prophylactic black box AIDS drug that slowly destroys your kidneys and liver. There's actually a class action lawsuit right now, a bunch of gay guys who are permanently damaged for life because they were on these drugs. Yeah. I mean, imagine a 16-year-old being put on black box drugs that have been shown to destroy your liver and kidneys. What are their liver and kidneys going to look like when they're 40?
Non-existent.
It's just so crazy. It's so crazy. So I guess what I'm trying to say is the dominator system has pinched off same-sex eroticism through the medicalization of the gay identity, as well as just the sort of shame that gets injected into our psyches vis-a-vis the medical industrial complex, religious groups, media even. You know, and then when there are depictions of same-sex erotic bonding, for example, Netflix, it's invariably under the influence. There's this glorification of like, let's do poppers. Let's drink alcohol. Poppers are these things that a lot of gay guys will sniff, and it's called amyl nitrates, and it's in this little bottle, and you unscrew it. I used to do it. You sniff it and it relaxes your anus so you can take dicks more easily up your butthole.
Damn.
And it causes Kaposi sarcoma. It causes these types of AIDS symptoms. And so it's really detrimental to health. So, for example, I was hiking in the woods, and there were all these gay guys having this orgy, and the whole forest smelled like poppers. It smelled like this strong smell of amyl nitrates. And I just was like, oh my God, this is so sad. Like, they feel they have to do these horrible health depleting substances in order to have a good time. And I just thought, wouldn't it be so cool if I was walking in the forest and there were a bunch of dudes in a circle complimenting each other's cocks and like doing the Wim Hof method and like getting high on breath, you know, or maybe doing like a sacred plant medicine journey, you know, and complimenting each other's penises while cupping each other's scrotums. Like, I feel like there's a higher caliber way of same-sex eroticism that's been lost on the West to a large degree. Now, I'm not saying that all men who identify as gay do poppers, but the CDC itself has admitted or has revealed that men who have sex with men, within that community, the drug abuse and alcohol abuse, suicidality, anxiety disorders, depressive disorders are far higher than the general population. Now, part of that is obviously because men who have sex with men openly have been vilified and scapegoated for so long by the dominator system. So I think that's partly why they feel they have to do these illicit drugs, because it's a projection of this shame inwardly that they've been castigated by society. And so the self-love, it's really hard to love yourself in this culture, regardless of what creed you belong to. But it's especially difficult to do same-sex erotic bonding in a high caliber way in our culture because of all the strictures around it as being something that's to be shameful about. You know, I just watched that movie, My Policeman, with, it's on Amazon Prime, with Harry Styles, which is about a policeman who falls in love with this dude back in the 50s in London. And, you know, at that time, the police were literally like catching the gay guys, catching the dudes and like putting them in prison and beating them up and putting them on hormones, injecting feminizing hormones into them so that they would develop breasts and their penises would turn into clits and their balls would shrink and then they would have no sex drive.
Damn.
Yeah. That's what happened to Alan Turing, who cracked the Nazi code. It was discovered that he was having sex with other dudes. And so the British government put him on these drugs, and then he ended up killing himself because he got like tits and he lost his sex drive, and they basically destroyed him. And I think in 2000, I think the British Prime Minister gave him a posthumous royal pardon. But yeah, long story short, it's really hard to do same-sex erotic bonding in a high caliber way, but it's getting easier because more people are like getting off alcohol and drugs, more people are thinking clearly, and more people are discovering things like breathwork, sexual kung fu, plant medicines, which are all ways to get out of the matrix and go, hey, it's actually very normal to like be naked around other dudes. It's not weird. It's not something that needs to stress me out. It can actually be a very beautiful, grounding experience. Why? Because iron sharpens iron. And most men have a divine masculine essence. So when men hang out naked together and do these rituals, they're literally sharpening their yang essence, which actually makes you more attracted to women. That's the big thing. It's like David Data, he wrote Way of the Superior Man. He says attraction is based in polarity. Well, hanging out naked with other dudes and like cold plunging and this and that, and like just checking out your own body, you know, feeling like a stag or a minotaur, that's going to shunt you more into your masculine, which will actually help you attract beautiful women into your life. Like it's all so connected. It's not like gay, straight. Yeah. Those are just tools the Matrix uses to divide and control us. They're not real.
Mm-hmm. You think it because it makes one more comfortable with their own sexuality, so almost like women can feel that?
Yeah. Yeah. And it also, like a lot of men who have sex with men, they criticize my work. They say, why would you want to hold in your seed? You know, or this type of narrative. And so I say same-sex erotic bonding without doing illicit drugs and without ejaculating each time can be a very powerful way to increase your divine masculine polarity. So it's got to be done intentionally and in a certain way. You can do ejaculation rituals with dudes, which really help to increase your health and your potency. It's just most men, regardless of whether they identify as gay or straight or whatever, are ejaculating too much because it takes the body so much energy to create semen. Think about it. It can create a whole new baby, a whole new human. And most men don't realize that it's sacred and we should not be ejaculating 6 times a day.
Yeah, no way. That's a little too much.
Too much.
Yeah. So summing that up is that our sexual essence is, like you said, it's sacred, it's divine, and we don't really take it seriously enough. Whether you're into guys, girls, both, whatever it is, we don't treat it as, like you said, a ritual, as it rightly is. It should be treated as such, like a dance with the divine in a way. We just kind of we just want to we get the desire and we want to almost get over the desire. Like we get the feeling and then we want to satisfy the feeling and then that's it. But when you create more of like this whole like ceremony around the feeling between you and the other people, that's when it really becomes something special and transcending.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well said. Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah, I feel that, man. So what kind of people are into same-sex erotic bonding? Like, I know you said to do it with guys and to be comfortable with guys, but are women also into that as well? Is this something that women can do?
Totally. Yeah, in ancient cultures, I've been reading a book called The Spirit and the Flesh by Walter L. Williams. And I also studied critical studies in sexuality and psychology at university. And some 85% of all Canadian First Nations tribes had these rituals where the belief was that when women are on their period, they're too potent. It's not that they're dirty. That was a Christian thing again. It was that they were too powerful, literally too powerful for the men to hang around while they were on their periods. So the women would go to like the red tent and they would all menstruate together. We know, like, science has shown that women who are always hanging out together, they end up on the same period cycle.
Yeah.
So they'd all like be menstruating together and like steaming their pussies with like herbs. And, you know, there'd be a female shamaness doing rituals to like enhance their femininity together, right? Yin enhances yin. And while that was happening, what we would call the gay guy or the bisexual, you know, kind of gender fluid dude would be leading the alpha males through yang enhancing rituals deep in the forest. And it was known by the community that if an alpha dude, who often had many wives and many offspring, needed healing, including sexual healing, he would go to the gay guy, the shaman, for that healing. And in the preponderance of First Nations tribes in North America, there were still very divinated or delineated gender roles. And so the alpha men had their first wife had to be a biological female, but their second wife it was considered to be one of the highest honors for one of these alpha warrior dudes to take on a second wife of a gay dude. And I use the word gay because it sort of is the word that seems to be very popular these days, but they didn't have that word. They would call the gay dude, they call him like the shaman. They would call him like the walker between the worlds. They'd call him like the mediator between men and women in the tribe. And the gay dude was supposed to be really good at being a woman and really good at being a man. So he could like help mediate between the men and women. Wow. And so to take on a second wife of a gay dude, that was like the highest honor. It's like, look at my second wife. Isn't he hot? Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. What era did you say that was in? Like what culture?
These are different First Nations tribes scattered throughout North America.
Oh, yeah.
85% of them that we studied in university had some sort of role that I'm describing. So there were men, there were biological men, biological women, and then there were what the French colonizers called the berdache, which is a derogatory French word meaning like slut. And so when the French colonizers came over, they saw these gay dudes, you know, with feathers, and they'd sometimes be wearing certain kind of face paint, and they were like very womanly and very manly all at the same time. And they're like, oh my God, it's demonic. Let's kill them. Yeah. And so the gay dudes were the first on the chopping block when the colonizers came. I've been reading the travel logs of some of these colonizers. It's like, oh my God, this is so ungodly. You know, both the warrior alpha dudes are fucking each other in the butt. And, you know, they're these weird dudes that like have feathers and they're very feminine, and we just need to kill them. So right from the get-go, when the planet was colonized, these aberrant archetypes were eliminated, not just in Canada, but all over the world. There's equivalents of these sort of, they would call like two-spirit shamans throughout the world before the Matrix took over, even in our ancestry. I'm assuming you've got some Celtic ancestry as well. The Druids would be like a similar archetype to like a two-spirit shaman. Back in the day before the British colonized Scotland.
Wow, that's pretty wild. I've never heard that before. So pretty much pre-colonization, people were more bisexual. You know, they were more sexual in general. They were just more accepting of the gender fluidity in general.
Well, they were understanding that same-sex erotic bonding is normal. And so if somebody, like even in British times, I think before the 1950s, homosexuality was not an identity. There was no such thing as a homosexual or a heterosexual. It was every human in our society can be tempted by the devil to engage in buggery, which is same-sex erotic bonding. It's a temptation that every single man in our society or every single woman in our society can fall prey to because the devil has infiltrated their being. So it went from that to a full-on medicalized identity, the heterosexual, the homosexual. But really, it's all bullshit. And the truth is, most humans respond erotically to other beautiful humans. And in ancient times, you could engage in same-sex erotic bonding without your masculinity and your identity and your archetype of being a true grounded man being threatened at all. It would actually enhance you if you, for example, competed in the Olympics in ancient Greece, or worked out in the gymnasium in ancient Greece. You had to be naked. You know, in the Hippocrates, the father of modern medicine, wrote that men would get naked in the Roman bathhouses together, and they'd like do pelvic floor exercises together. They would do like their own version of sexual kung fu to strengthen their potency. There's certain rituals where like one dude would lie on like a couch and the other dude would stroke his cock and be like, you've got an amazing cock, brother. You're so divine masculine. You're a fucking stag. You're a lion. And after they perform that ritual, the man would be all charged up, and then he'd like ravish his wife in a really potent way and be a stronger leader for his community, because the way you feel about your masculinity really dictates your overall performance in life and your overall self-esteem. Wow. So that's been lost. And to go back to now our society, it's like that behavior still happens, but it squirts out in really low vibrational ways, like seeing guys doing poppers in the forest. Or my friend was in hockey camp. You know, he was a pretty good hockey player, and he told me that when he was like in his late teens, they would go on these like hockey tours to like play other teams in other parts of Canada, and they'd rent out like hotel rooms, and then they would like handcuff him. His teammates would like handcuff him, get him, strip him naked, and then have him watch porn, and he would have to try to get a full-on erection while watching the porn without touching his penis. And all the other dudes would be like, yeah, bro, fuck yeah. And then they would go into the locker room and they would put a cookie in the center of the room, of the locker room after like a game. And they would all masturbate their penises and then ejaculate together onto the cookie. And the last dude, yeah, the slimy cookie, the last dude who came had to eat the cum-filled cookie. And so these are examples, or even I've got certain friends who are in the American Army. They said that they would have these sort of rituals in the showers where they'd be like, you know, spanking each other's butts and doing these things. Or we hear in the news quite often, sadly, all these hazing rituals where one dude will stick a broomstick up another dude's butthole, you know, while they're super drunk to initiate them into the frat house. So my whole message is like, same-sex erotic bonding is so natural for straight, gay, whatever, for dudes to do and for women to do. But because the homophobia and the shame is so intense, it goes underground and then it squirts out in really low caliber ways. So let's shine a light on it. Let's say, hey, it's okay to like hug another dude and not feel like you need to like hit him on the back. And on the other side of the coin, you don't have to like go full on. I'm not saying, you know, if you're a dude listening to this, like go and have sex with your best friend. I'm just saying like, try hugging your best friend without the gay panic coming up. Yeah. Right. Because when I see two men who identify as straight in our culture, even I fall prey to this. I feel like I need to like hit my friend on the back, and I can't really hug too long because that might make other dudes think that I'm gay. That was a huge hurdle to get over. And I still have this, after all the work I've done, I still sometimes have this impulse. I'm like, oh, I want to come across as like a real man. So I'm going to like hit him on the back. I'm like, no way, I'm just breathe and relax into it. Let yourself be charged up by this situation rather than shying away from it, thinking that somebody's going to think that you're not a real man.
Yeah. Well said.
Thank you,
man. It's so true though. It's so ingrained in us to be, homophobic essentially, and really when it comes down to it, yeah, you don't have to go fuck your best friend like you said.
Exactly.
But
I wouldn't recommend that at all, because if you go and do that in this culture, you're going to invariably be in a state of high stress, because you're going to be like, oh my God, this is so intense. Like don't put yourself in a situation where it's overwhelming for you. Just play your edge. Just like maybe you're used to cold plunging with your bros with like little booties on and little gloves on and like a hat and like a polyester swimming suit. So maybe it's like, just take all that shit off. So there's no barriers between you and nature and no barriers between you and your bros, and just feel that divine masculine energy percolate in the tribe of men while you're doing your cold plunging. Like just kind of step it up a little bit and see how it feels.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Be wild.
Don't be afraid to hug your friends and tell them you love them. You know, it's not
exactly.
Come on.
You know, even in modern day Egypt, dudes will like hold hands in the streets and they'll like kiss each other on the cheeks and they'll hug and sit on each other's laps in public.
Don't do that in America, man. That you'd get put on TikTok. You know, you just like automatically.
Yeah, you'd be. And the interesting thing is, even though in Egypt and Middle Eastern countries that's the case, if you act too feminine as a man, you will be hung in a city square, like in Iran. So it's not the sexual behavior that is punishable in places like Iran. It's whether you act like a macho man or not. Yeah. So a lot of my Persian friends, they'll say, yeah, my father, yes, he's married to my mother. And also in Iran, he was fucking other dudes. But as long as he was like the dominant top, that didn't affect his masculinity, his perception of by society of like his virility and like his validity as a human in that culture. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying that's right, but it's just interesting how different cultures construe these topics.
Yeah, exactly. It's ultimately just different narratives that are placed around not expressing our sexuality for how it should be, and really just shooing it away for what it is, and shooing it away and just acting like it doesn't exist and being shameful of it over the years. We've been indoctrinated into the system. Where does it come from? I don't know, but I know it's been here for a while. And really what it comes down to, the whole thing, summing it up, this conversation, is that we don't, we're just not involved with our sexuality as much as we should be, and as much as we came from. I think it's like a part of us that is literally ingrained in us, literally a part of our being from centuries ago that we just are shut off from now. And I think it's just leading to a lot of mental illness, a lot of stress, a lot of just confusion. And I think if you continually shut yourself off from that, from embracing it, then you're going to continually be on that hamster wheel of suffering in any which way that you want to go about it. I mean, that's the beautiful thing about this, is everybody's got their own way to go about embracing their sexuality. But I think if you just completely shut off from embracing it whatsoever, there's something not right there. You know what I mean? There's something, just like, if you don't even have the freedom to do so, or the gumption to do so in your being, to even just ask the question about like what's going on down there, more than just getting a boner and doing porn here and there, or I mean not doing porn, but
watching porn.
Watching porn. You can do porn as well, but you know what I'm trying to say. It's like if you just keep it at the base level, pleasure seeking, just trying to fulfill your desire, feeling good, just and I don't know, what I'm trying to say. If you just keep it at a very base level, just, it's not even a thing, you just do it just to do it, there's going to be something in you that is going to not feel right about life, essentially. I mean, that's how I feel. Like, there's just something, I know, because I've been on this journey of what we've talked about, not really as intense as you, but I do my own form of sexual transmutation and semen retention as well. And then since I've been doing that, I've only been happier. I've only been like more creative. I've only been more clear-headed, like more aligned in my being, more proud of who I am. And the list of benefits goes on and on. And summing it up is, I think that's something that our society's cut off from, is truly embracing our sexuality. And however you want to go about it, you can go about it. As long as you're not hurting anybody, I think it's cool. But just the simple fact of embracing it, and the simple fact of recognizing that it's there, is very powerful for one's being. Like, more than just actually recognizing it, but like actually like utilizing it, and knowing that it's literally a part of being, literally a human being, is your sexuality. And there's so much power, you know what I mean? There's so much power in that. So my question to you, man, is this: do you think that in order for this whole like manifesting whatever you want, doing whatever you want in life, creating the life of your dreams, do you think you need to utilize your sexual energy? If you're just wasting it and not even recognizing it, that it's going to be possible for one to be able to live the life of their dreams?
Oh yeah. I think it's so hard to manifest your dreams when you're pinched off from your sexual energy. Like, we have the high heart in the chest, and then we have the low heart of the cock, balls, and prostate. And in Chinese medicine, the penis is the outermost extension in classical Chinese medicine. And so, yes, like Mother Teresa was interviewed, one of her last interviews, according to Montauk Chia, and they said, Mother Teresa, how do you get all this energy to help people? Your whole life, you've like been so helping people and just so selfless. And I'll paraphrase, but she said, according to Montauk Chia, she said something like, I feel my sexual energy between my legs, and I allow it to rise up into my heart, into my hands, and I let it fuel me. So it's like I combine the arousal, orgasm energy of my loins with the love and compassion of my heart. And that combination, fuels me and gives me inspiration. It makes me feel juicy. It brings joy to the journey of doing what you need to do to manifest your dreams. It's like as you were saying before, your testicles are your turbines. They're your engines of alpha growth. They're your water wheels. And in most modern spiritual lineages, such as modern Buddhism, they're not allowed to focus anywhere below their belly button. There's so much shame, and they've got really high rates of diabetes and what have you, because they're never allowed to go into their primality. They always have to be love and light, and just like eating minimal food and just kind of like meditating. That's another thing I like about sexual kung fu. There's a lot of standing, right? Which is really good for strengthening and releasing testosterone, strengthening your legs. We're always kind of standing with our knees slightly bent, working out our lower bodies. Whereas in many yogic and Buddhist lineages, they're constantly just sitting, letting their legs atrophy.
That's true.
You know, so it's
about that.
Yeah, they don't really care about that. It's like the goal is to like leave the body, and kind of just be like totally emaciated. And a study I was reading from Dr. Northrup in her book, Dodging Energy Vampires, she was saying that a study was done on Tibetan Buddhist monks, and like they got so much diabetes in that community, and they found that from a young age, even though the Chinese have like raped and pillaged their villages for so long, the young Buddhist monks are taught to go from like anger right to loving kindness, and to not really express or feel the anger to heal it. So they're constantly bypassing anger and primality and fuck yeah, and going right to like love and light, everything's fine, just send love to the Chinese, it's okay, they can keep raping. And when you do that, it really causes a lot of beta endorphins to be released into your bloodstream, which affects the reuptake of glucose. So they're literally sugarcoating their primality and their rage and their anger and their stag-like male protector selves. They're sugarcoating that rage, and they're giving themselves diabetes in the process. So I always say, like, it's important for your health to be a wild stag. And even pigs on farms, like the little cute pink pigs, if you release one of those pigs into the wild, after a couple years, it'll grow tusks, it'll get hairy, it'll get darker, and it'll turn back into more like a wild beastie. And I see modern men as like little pink pigs. And so that's why I'm always really advocating to like hold in your seed, so you got more energy in your balls to shunt into your body, and then go into nature and hang around other dudes naked, because iron sharpens iron. Like all these things I teach are geared towards helping men come back into the wild boar state from the domesticated piglet state.
Yeah, man. And for anyone that's listening that doesn't believe us, you just have to try it. At the end of the day, it's the proof is in the pudding. If you just don't whack off every day and you actually just hold it in, know how to transmutate it in the right way, you will definitely notice a difference in your being.
Totally.
Yeah, it's all.
And if you want to work with me one-on-one, head over to willblunderfield.ca and send me a message, because I find that's the most powerful ways to learn it from another dude naked. And some of my clients, I usually teach through Zoom. I've got clients around the world. Some of them are comfortable to be naked as well, and we'll do it together. And other dudes are not, and that's fine too. Sometimes they'll just be wearing clothes and taking notes as I'm like arousing myself. This is how you do it. Do breath of fire for 40 seconds, focus at your low belly. What do your balls feel like right now? Smile into that feeling, and inhale, shunt it into the rest of your system. So I walk dudes through step by step how to become multi-orgasmic. And I coach them in nutrition and detox protocols as well. I think the key word for these times is detox. Our food supply is so toxic, and people getting injections of all sorts of things, like people who get the certain government endorsed injections that are being shoved down the throats of the masses right now. I'm always like, did you read the ingredients before you acquiesce to that? And they're like, no. They're like, I heard like the same ingredients are in Taco Bell, so it's fine. I'm like, well, why are you eating Taco Bell? Why? And actually a certain percentage of the population is actually allergic to polyethylene glycol and polysorbate 80, which are in most injections. And so I always just say educate before you vaccinate. I'm not anti or vax, I think that's a derogatory term. I'm pro science, and I'm pro educating yourself so that you can make an informed choice for yourself and your family. Yeah,
exactly. Not even just in terms of the vaccinations, everything. Educate what you're putting in your body. And we don't, as a society, we really don't. And I think that's really the switch. And that's the big switch that one can come to, is realize that our bodies, I like to say, are like an input-output machine in a way, putting it very simply. And whatever you input, you're going to output. So if you're putting in the right stuff, you're going to put out the right stuff to the movie screen of the mind. And we don't even think of it like that. We just put whatever is in our body, whatever is cheapest. Like you said, Taco Bell, McDonald's, Burger King, they're still in business and they're still thriving for some reason. We're just not wise enough to do that for some reason. But I think that's the switch in becoming a yogi, is realizing that you have the ability to choose. Thankfully, living in the first world, especially living in America, we have the ability to choose what we want to put in our body, the energy the energetic diet that we intake, it's so important. It's so important to our happiness and well-being, man.
Totally.
Yeah, it's the time of detox for sure. We're getting rid of the old ways and in with the new. And yeah, it's a process. It's definitely taking time, and it's a learning process for all of us. But that's what being a yogi is. Always the student. It's a never-ending process to find our way back to happiness, because that's what it's all about. We all just want to be happy here. We all just want to enjoy this short incarnation as a human being. We all just want to have a little less stress in our lives, a little more flow, a little less inertia to this life that we find. So there is a way.
Amen, brother.
Yeah, there is a way out. That's the good news. Is there is a way, not necessarily out, because we're not trying to escape from anything, but there's a way in. I guess the only way out is in a way. So
Totally.
there's a way to go about this life. I guess what I'm trying to say, that's a little bit easier and a little bit just more aligned with how one is supposed to be as a human being, and it's available for all of us, man. It really is.
Yeah, we're designed to be subtle. And I think another thing is the lustiness of our society. Whether you identify as gay or straight, there's this kind of outsourcing of our eroticism. It makes me think of the Salvador Dali quote, "I don't do drugs, I am drugs."
Yeah.
And the dominator system runs on predatory capitalism. So for people to feel juicy and sexy in their own skin is a detriment to the matrix and the way it functions.
That's power.
Yeah, it's power. When you feel your joy is your power, your erotic prowess is your power. So when you reconnect to that and feel like a sexy beast, then you don't need as much to be happy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you're able to be more subtle. It's like you notice a beautiful woman on the street. You don't have to be like, oh my God, now I need to go jack off. Or like, oh my God, I need to like go try to pick her up and be inappropriate. You can just be subtle enough to like feel her extra yin energy and breathe it into your system as she walks by. And then send that gratitude out to her and send your extra yang energy to her, for example. Or you notice a beautiful dude, instead of like wanting to jump his bones, or go into gay panic on the other side of the spectrum, you're just like, yeah, that's a really beautiful man. And you just feel the subtlety of the yang energy being charged up through what we call the testiculum or the pelvic consciousness. I believe there's this invisible sort of mycelium network of, energetic communication between men's balls. In many pre-literate society, they're always naked. Sometimes they've got like a penis cone on that's called a koteka, for example, in Papua New Guinea tribes. And the men actually cup each other's ball sacks instead of shaking hands. And they look into each other's eyes and they say, "I see you, brother." Aubrey Marcus was talking about this recently on his podcast. His friend went to live with his tribe and they were like cupping his balls. He's like, "Whoa, what's happening?" But that's how they greet, it's like literally sending good energy into your bro's balls. They don't think that that's gay. That's just how they greet in certain tribes. And to any American or Canadian or Western men listening to this, that might be too much. That might be too much for you. That's quite intense, especially in a society that's so restrictive sexually. But I would say just like spend more time naked with yourself. Cup your own balls. One of my teachers, Amy Jindra, she taught me this technique called feather touch, where you just like gently touch your body with the fingertips. And it's really good for activating a parasympathetic nervous system and developing your self-sensory system.
Oh, yeah, I can feel that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And men have been like taught, oh, don't be too sensual with yourself. You might be a faggot. And I say, no. If you're not sensual with yourself, you're going to be a, what this culture would call, what they're alluding to when they say faggot, you're not going to be your fullest expression. That's what they're trying to say. Everything's backwards in our society.
Yeah.
They've made it seem bad to love yourself. And to have a good self-sensory system and to be subtle. They're like, drink lots of alcohol, punch holes in your aura, let demons come in and control you. It's so good for predatory capitalism to have people uncomfortable in their bodies. So we always say, the Vedas say, pratipaksha bhavanan. When harassed by negative patterns that don't support life, cultivate their opposite. So when society says, no, you're going to be a faggot if you touch yourself lovingly, do the opposite. Really spend some time every day just touching yourself lovingly. Basically, don't follow the crowd. They are lost. It's no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society, says Krishnamurti, and I agree with him. Love yourself.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite quotes for sure. We are profoundly sick. That is so true, man. Yeah. I mean, don't you feel a lot of gratitude for having this viewpoint on life, being a yogi in general. It's very freeing. It's like nothing can harm you.
Yeah, it's liberating to have that remembrance. And again, detox is really important. Like cocaine, it affects your ability to be subtle. Glyphosate in the food affects your ability to be subtle because it destroys your gut bacteria, and your gut bacteria make most of your serotonin. It also damages the cilia in your gut, so it makes it harder for your body to absorb nutrients. It also makes it harder for you to digest difficult experiences and emotions. The Chinese Taoists say that the lower belly is the area, it's the area where you can let your thoughts and emotions come down to be digested. So it's just more energy for your fire. But if your digestive fire is not strong enough, it's really hard to digest difficult emotions.
Yeah. Wow.
Not just food.
Yeah.
It's hard to extract nutrients from difficult emotions when your gut is not on par. And so the yogis really focus a lot on spinal health, because that's the literal connection between the mind and the body, and gut health. There's drinking urine. There's certain enema processes. I was reading the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, which is ancient yogic text on yogic lifestyle practices, and most of it's not like different asanas. It's most of the Hatha Yoga Pradipika is like lifestyle things. Like when you take a shit, squat down, stick your finger up your butthole, and swirl it 9 times clockwise and 9 times counterclockwise to get the shit out of your butthole.
Wow, is that what you do?
Yeah, you do that?
No, I'm saying, is that what you do?
Oh yeah, I usually, like in the morning when I take a shit, I'll either stick my fingers up my butthole in the bath and let any remaining shit come out, or I'll use like a douche and just make sure my rectum is completely clean after I take a shit in the morning.
Oh. It
feels really good to have a nice clean butthole. Like in France, they have like the bidet, or in Japan they have like, yeah, I need a bidet.
I got a bidet, man. Once you get a bidet, you don't go back. It's like, you get one for like $25, $30. You just attach it to your toilet. Once you get that, you don't go back, man. I don't know what America's doing and why they're not on that wavelength. Probably because of the homophobia. They think they're going to be gay, but
exactly. And if you think about it, exactly. If you think about it, like most people in North America are walking around with like really shitty buttholes.
I've had that idea before. I'm like, it's disgusting.
It's so gross. You can only get so much shit off your butthole with toilet paper. Like most people walking around have like shit in their butts.
Yeah. I've had that visualization before too, and I don't like to think about it, but it's true.
All these shitty buttholes.
It's true, man. All because people just don't want to be called gay, and because that's really the only reason. It's not like they're hard to put in, and it's not like they're expensive to get a bidet, man. Get a bidet, or stick your fingers up your butt. That too, whatever. Yeah, whatever it is, man. I mean, do you feel a lot better from doing that physiologically?
Oh yeah,
like mentally.
Yeah, just knowing that my rectum is like completely devoid of shit feels good.
Yeah, man. Detoxification. That's what it's all about.
Totally.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, it's realizing the path. I see it as realizing what you don't need. It's like getting rid of stuff. Like the whole idea of spirituality I see is getting rid of what we don't need, simplifying your life. So like you said, you can become more subtle, more pure, maybe more neutral in the way you act, however way you want to put it, man. It's like, what do I not need? And the fact of the matter is, we don't need a lot. As a human being, we really don't need a lot, at least from what we've been told from society. Whatever they tell us we need, most likely is not what you need in your life.
Exactly.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. And people I think are too trusting. Oh, my doctor says that I need to get this shot, so it must be true. It's like, well, did you're the master of your own body. Did you educate yourself, or did you just blindly trust this person who received literally 0 hours of training in human nutrition in medical school? And I have family members and friends who are medical doctors, and I say, what are the adjuvants in most vaccines? And they can't tell me. Certain friends are like, yeah, we learned the vaccines were good in medical school, but we didn't, and we learned how to administer them, but we did not learn actually what's in them.
Yeah. It's like, don't you want to know?
Yeah. Don't you want to know what you're putting into your body? And I mean, we could go down a whole rabbit hole, but I discovered the German New Medicine, which is basically the understanding that no illness can happen in your body without the involvement of the psyche and the brain. And in that lineage, we learned that we are 10 to 1 microbe. So for every one human cell that makes up our being, there's 10 microbial cells of bacteria, mycobacteria, fungi, and viruses if they exist. Although there's no scientific proof that strictly adheres to the scientific method, proving that viruses even exist, that they've ever been isolated from the fluids of a sick host.
I've heard that. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like viruses, even viruses, if they exist, they're there for a purpose, and it's not to kill you. Viruses, according to Dr. Berlando of Alpha Vedic, are cellular debris, nothing more, nothing less. And bacteria are cellular debris eaters. So in German New Medicine, we learned that the cause of disease, of symptomology, is something that hits it's like an unexpected shock that hits your body, your mind, and your soul all at the same time. And if it's intense enough and unexpected enough and dramatic enough, it can initiate a biological survival program that's designed to assist an organism, dog, human, whatever, in a time of unexpected conflict shock to help them get through it. It's like an adaptive process. So the cause of disease is a conflict shock invariably. It can also be a poisoning. And the microbes will come in during the healing phase of the so-called disease, and they'll either start to break down tissue that's no longer needed, or they'll start to rebuild tissue that was degraded during the stress phase. So every disease has a stress phase and a healing phase, a cold phase and a warm phase. And so to get rid of the fear of microbes is huge. And that's why I'm so passionate about it. It's like, if we can get rid of our collective fear of our own bodies, because we're 10 to 1 microbe, the dominator system won't be able to keep playing the same virus game over and over and over again.
Yeah. Wow, man. So you're saying disease and sickness and the whole pandemic we lived through is more of an energetic thing? We're just looking at it a little backwards?
Yeah, I mean, could viruses exist? Sure. Could unicorns exist? Sure. But I'm a very science-minded person, and anybody who sends me a paper, it's like, no, look, the title of this paper on PubMed or Google Scholar, it says COVID isolation, virus isolation. But it's like, did you read it? Did you read the whole paper? It's like they didn't have a control group, and they did it in a petri dish, and they like took some snot that they didn't purify, and then they mixed it with like fetal bovine serum and like gentamicin, which is known to break down kidney tissue cells. It's like, how can you tell me that this paper is showing that it was the virus that caused the cytopathic effect in the petri dish on the monkey kidney cells? Or was it all the shit they put in that caused the cytopathic effect? For example, gentamicin is known to degrade kidney cells. So it's like, it's so pseudoscientific, it's laughable. But most people don't have the wherewithal or the gumption to want to actually research it, and they just blindly trust the government or this or that, or virologists. And the way I know that we're onto something here is when you ask a virologist about this, they get really emotional and they get really angry and they attack you. They usually resort to ad hominem attacks or appeals to authority or bandwagon fallacies. They try to attack your character, or they say, well, you're not a doctor, so you've got no right to be looking into this. It's like, no. Answer my question. Like, can you show me a paper where a virus has actually been isolated? Really, like according to the actual definition of isolation, it's like nobody can provide that, so they just attack your character. I'm like, that's not a very good way to argue. That's just kind of showing that we're onto something here, because they're getting so nasty. It's a real nastiness when you talk about this to most Western physicians.
Yeah, man. We're living under almost like a spell in a way. Mm-hmm. And I think it's the authority taking advantage of people's lack of attention span and lack of will to seek out answers. So at this point,
yes, yeah,
let's just be honest. Most people are willing to accept whatever is given to them in the form of, this is the answer. Here you go. This is the explanation for whatever's going on in your body or in your life, because we just don't have the time, I guess, or attention span. And I blame things like TikTok and YouTube Shorts and Instagram Reels for literally rewiring our brain and not giving us the ability. I guess we all have the ability, but it's kind of like taken away from our ability, our God-given power to be able to do that.
And glyphosate.
Yeah, glyphosate
and vaccines. Right? It's a pesticide they spray on pretty much everything. All these things, it's a multi-pronged, chemtrails. All these things are a multi-pronged approach to dumbify the masses and lower your motivation to do research.
Yeah. Because
lower your motivation to brush your teeth.
Yeah.
Even alcohol, the promulgation of the promotion of alcohol is such a dumbification process, because they're like, it's cool to poison yourself. Like, go poison yourself. And most alcohol, it's like a double whammy. There's the alcohol factor plus 80-90% of all beer and wine on the market is riddled with glyphosate. So they're like, just have this poison. And I don't know about you, but when I used to drink, I'm an alcoholic. So I would drink too much. Then I'd be hungover for a few days and I would have no desire to even like brush my teeth or like go for a run, let alone do any research on these topics that we're talking about. So it's a dumbification, and all these things lower our motivation. I have certain friends who got the COVID shot and then they ended up with a vitreous detachment, which means that they're blind for the rest of their life in one eye. Certain friend had that happen and also passed out the day after, and had to have like multiple surgeries to put pins and plates into their arm. Like, it's like all these things render you a patient for life. It's like they want you to be a dumbified patient for life, and they don't want you to investigate and interrogate the very foundations of allopathy and virology for yourself. So they dumbify you to the point where you're just like, oh, those people are anti-vaxxers. Oh, those people are AIDS denialists. It's like, well, did you actually do any research? It's like, no, you just projected your own laziness onto other people and you're not actually willing to think for yourself. And I was there. I've got empathy because I used to think that too. I was like, oh, these anti-vaxxers, like my parents are doctors and they know the best. And oh my God, these stupid AIDS denialists. Like, how could they, all those people in the 80s died of AIDS? It's like, no, they died of AZT and fear. It's called poisoning. It's called pointing the bone. Aboriginal tribes have been doing it for eons. They don't like you. They point the bone at you. The witch doctor points the bone at you. This is like certain Aboriginal tribes in Australia, for example. And then the belief in that culture is if the witch doctor points the bone at you, you die. And so that person would die. So the power of belief, the nocebo effect, is huge. I even talked to a friend who's a doctor. I was like, isn't it interesting? The placebo and nocebo effects are so powerful. And like, this person was a psychiatrist. And I was like, isn't it interesting? In like many of these psychiatric drug studies, the placebo group, the group getting the sugar pill often does just as well or better than the drug being tested. And this person was like, oh yeah, that's a huge problem in our industry. I'm like, it's a problem. The power of the mind is a problem. The fact that you can heal yourself, and that the sugar pill did just as well as this expensive drug. That's and they're like, well, it's a figure of speech. I'm like, well, it's not a problem. It's actually a beautiful thing. There's a book called The Biology of Belief by Bruce Lipton, where he talks about how there was this Cartesian dualistic split where, because the church got to take control of the soul and the mind, the doctors got to take control of the body. And so they artificially split the two. And now we're starting to have this remembrance that no illness can ever happen in the body without some kind of involvement of the brain and the psyche. It's always connected.
Yeah. So it's like an unconscious allowance from the psyche that allows us to become ill.
Yeah, the psyche is always the most important determinant in wellness or dis-ease. And fear is very real, and you can literally kill yourself with your thoughts. You can literally think. I've done it a few times in my life when I didn't know better. You can get yourself into a real tizzy with your thoughts.
Yeah, man, for sure. And like you said, the powers that be, they say that's a problem. But in reality, it's a solution to the people. But they don't want us to know that. They don't want us to take back the power, because the fact of the matter is a few people that hold power in our world. They probably are nameless. They probably are shrouded in mystery. We probably have no clue who they are. But there has to be, man. I don't want to even be, and if you go down this route, they'll label you a conspiracy theorist, right? Quote unquote. But let's be honest. If you go within enough and you kind of do enough searching of yourself and you figure out the world enough and you kind of like just ask the questions, you can kind of infer that there is this power structure to the world and how things don't just happen by accident. So these people that are kind of pulling the puppet strings at the top of the pyramid per se, it's probably a very small cult. Let's be honest. It's probably a very, very small amount of people, a fraction of the billions of people that are on Earth. They don't want to lose their power. They don't want us to know how much power the people have, because essentially there's power in numbers. So if we do regain our power, then they lose their power. So they're going to do whatever they can do to further their power. And it's happening right now. It's definitely happening. Like, there's a lot of darkness, like there's a lot of density and a lot of bullshit, I guess you could say, to be frank. But I think there's a lot of, on the other side of the coin, a lot of people seeing through the bullshit, because as it gets more and more dense, there's people that are able to see through it even more effectively due to its density. You know, it's like Prakriti and Purusha. You need to know, you need to be able to use Prakriti, the bullshit, the illusion of Maya, to be able to see through the illusion of Maya and see how it is all just an illusion. Well, I think that's literally what's happening as we speak.
Yes. And the cult that runs the planet, who are they? They are a small group of mostly males who have been sexually traumatized, as we all have, but them especially. And they probably are imbibing certain substances, including alcohol. And so they're punching holes in their aura, and they're opening themselves up to demonic control and possession. So the cult that runs the planet is a bunch of sexually traumatized men who drink too much alcohol. And someone's like, why would you want to? First of all, it gives us a little compassion for them, because we go, okay, yeah, that's intense. And we just see them for what they are. They're just kind of pinched off people. And then we kind of go, well, who's controlling them? Ralph Smart calls them the inorganic ones. And so I just really think it's important, and anybody can be open to being sort of controlled by the inorganic ones. So I think, because our suffering is their life force, and our joy is their sort of demise or leaving us alone. I've heard that a lot of these inorganic ones are actually realizing that they don't need to fuck with us to get energy. It was kind of like a delicacy that they never really needed. So a lot of the inorganic ones are actually on our side, and they're like, we don't need to like be fucking with the humans anymore. Let's just leave them alone. Like, because they're going to be accruing karma by continuing to fuck with us. So they're kind of realizing, like, maybe this isn't the best approach. So I like that idea of like thinking that a lot of the dominator controllers themselves are like, hey, let's just stop this.
Yeah. What's happening right now? Babylon's crumbling right before our very eyes.
Totally.
It's just a matter of time at this point. Like, it's already, the cat's out of the bag. You know, Pandora's box of awakening has been opened at this point, and now it's just a matter of people getting on the bandwagon. But it's like, how do you get people on the bandwagon? I mean, I don't think it's really up to any of us to get people on the bandwagon. It's up to really people in their own lives. But I mean,
totally.
What do you think is like, what do you think is the number one, or, you know, maybe a few ways to get people like on that wavelength? Or how do you see other people get on that wavelength?
I like that. And I've got about 5 more minutes, because I've got a breathwork session at 12:30.
Gotcha, man.
If that's cool. So I think this is actually a good way to wrap up. This is a good question. I think that when we start to cultivate good daily habits that keep us in our highest, that we naturally start to awaken. Like, most of the dudes who are into my work don't eat McDonald's every day. Most of the dudes into my work are into some kind of breath work. Like I do. That's why I'm doing this breath work with this Irish dude on Zoom at 12:30, is like, these things raise our frequency, and then we're more apt to increase our chances of having a remembrance of who we really are. And we start to cultivate better boundaries with other people, and we start to have better Viveka, better discernment. Because when you're flying high, when your vibration is raised, all you really want to do is write poetry and connect with kind humans and go for runs in nature and write songs, and it creates like an upward spiral of like a releasing of little puffs of nitric oxide from every cell of the being. When you appreciate a beautiful sunset, or when you appreciate yourself or touch yourself with love, you're releasing these little puffs of nitric oxide from every cell of your being. It's been called the ultimate neurochemical, because when it hits your brain, it bounces out serotonin and dopamine, and you start to create this upward spiral in your life where you become more and more awake, right? Because our joy is our power. And then from that place, you operate with better and better boundaries, and you tolerate less bullshit from yourself and others. And you start to have a ripple effect on the world around you. So, the controllers, some of them wanted to put people more to sleep, but I think some of them are like, hey, let's do this, and like, let's waken them up. The darker the night, the brighter the star. Let's get these people to really shine. Let's live it, be it now. It's the Aquarian age. It's a brighter age than the Piscean age.
For sure. It's always darkest before the dawn. I like that, man. Well, I appreciate your time. Do you have any last words other than that?
If anybody has any inkling to want to connect with my work, willblunderfield.ca. I've been deleted 10 times on Instagram and a bunch of times on other platforms because I talk about massaging your balls. And I talk about medical freedom, educate before you vaccinate. But if you go to my Twitter, that one, it's quite explicit, but Twitter has different community guidelines and they allow nudity on Twitter. So you can head over to @WBlunderfield on Twitter. But my sort of main hub is willblunderfield.ca. I also have a podcast called Urban Yogi Podcast on any streaming service. And I talk a lot about medical freedom. I've had people like Dr. Kelly Brogan and Dr. Christiane Northrup and Tom Barnett on there recently. And if you're interested in learning more about German New Medicine and understanding that microbes are invariably not the source, just like flies are not the cause of the garbage, microbes are not always the cause of disease. They're actually there to perform some sort of function. Kind of like when there's a tree dying in the forest, the fungi come in to help break it down. They're not the cause of the tree dying usually. They usually come in after to perform some sort of function.
Their result.
Yeah, and there's a science of pleomorphism where like a certain bacteria will transform into something depending on what's going on in somebody's body. I kind of like to think of the body as like a forest ecosystem. And so German New Medicine puts the pieces together to help you understand what's going on in your body. And it's based on the discoveries of this German physician named Dr. Hammer. But yeah, so check out Dr. Melissa Sell, Sell, on my show, Urban Yogi Podcast, to learn more about the German New Medicine understanding of wellness.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate your time, your wisdom. Will Blunderfield, man, you are the real deal.
Thanks, brother. I feel the same about you. I appreciate your time and thanks for all your intelligent questions and your camaraderie.
Thank you. Other than that, thank you everybody that listened. Peace out and namaste, brother.
Namaste, my dude.